This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome to The Drive. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and it is a Monday in Pittsburgh, and, well, it was a late night
for
Steeler fans and the Steelers in general. Sunday night, the rains came in. We talked about that last week, about that possibility, and
I didn't realize it was going to be like that, though, like delay the game type rains and what weather.
The rain was not the problem.
Yeah.
You play through the rain. It's the lightning that was in the area that was the issue, and that will stop a game every single time. That's what I was worried about. I don't care about rain. Players can get wet, and that's football weather.
It just so happened to be a night game, which means everybody's sleepy today.
Yeah, a little tired, a little slow in the get up today.
Didn't help my cause that, oh, by the way, this was a week where you get up early for the quadruple header because of the England game, too. That was, I guess someone said it was like 15 hours from kickoff to the final whistle of NFL football yesterday.
Is that all it was?
It seemed like 38.
Yeah, because by the time I got to bed, it was about 20 hours after
I bet.
After all that stuff happened. But the Steelers lose 20-17 to the Dallas Cowboys. Such a strange game because the Steelers defense in the first half gets 3 stops in the red zone. Not just stops, but don't even let the Cowboys get on the board.
Right, takeaways.
Takeaways. Right. They force 2 turnovers. They get a blocked field goal. And then the Steelers come out on the opening drive of the second half and go right down the field and score a touchdown. All of a sudden now it's 10-6, and you're like, oh. If you're Dallas, you're like, boy, we left a lot of opportunities on the field in the first half.
Yeah, my halftime notes were like, Dallas better be kicking themselves.
Yeah.
And it might come back to haunt them. And it didn't.
Even at that, it still could have.
Oh, yeah.
They allow the game goes back and forth. The lead changes hands a couple of times in the fourth quarter. Dallas goes down and scores. Steelers respond and come back and get a touchdown of their own. They go up 17-13 with just under 5 minutes left. And you're like, okay, the defense needs to get a stop here. Mm-hmm. And they got the fourth down in that situation. They had the fumble on second down that Landon Roberts forced at the goal line.
What a play that was.
That, you give Dak Prescott credit for that.
No
because
question.
A lot of quarterbacks, if you do the handoff on that and you carry out your fake or you just start, running back away from the pile, you're not in position to recover that fumble. And
they probably lose the game.
Yeah, and there were Steelers there who could have recovered the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
He happened to get there first. Just the way the ball bounces, and they get the fourth down play that, Deshaun Elliott didn't have bad coverage. He almost, he tried to strip the ball out of there on that one. If he forces an incompletion there, it would have been, oh, what a great play by, Deshaun Elliott, but it didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. And there's concerns. I don't think the Steelers played well as a
team.
Not. Absolutely.
I felt much differently about this one than I did the Indianapolis game because the defense in the Colts game, the first 2 possessions were like, okay, they went down the field and scored. But then after that, it wasn't quite the same. There were some 3-and-outs. There were this one, Dallas consistently moved the ball.
And they had some long drives. And then the fourth quarter, which inevitably happens to every defense, when you're that spent and you've been out there that long, you get beat up on. Too much defense or
Dallas ran 75 plays.
Yeah.
To 51 for the Steelers.
A couple long drives late, and all of a sudden they found their running game. And, well, there's something to be said for that because the Steelers are dragging, and they're on their they're running out of edge guys and, on the field way too long, which is complementary football. When the Steelers run the ball well, get first downs, and are easier on their defense, the defense plays better. The best defense is less defense. I believe that wholeheartedly. But I think the defense was as much to blame for all that as the offense. Like you said, the Colts, the first couple drives, Steelers defense didn't play well. But then they tightened up and looked like the Steelers D. This didn't look like the Steelers D for most of the day.
No, so they had 18 carries for 70 yards in the first half, the Steelers.
Steelers, okay.
They finished with 26 carries for 92 yards. They couldn't complete passes in the first half. Justin Fields was 4 of 9 throwing the football in the first half. Yeah. So, even though you were running the ball effectively, you weren't converting first downs. They were 1 for 7 on third downs in the first half.
Once again, third downs in general were a nightmare for the entire game.
Yeah.
Both sides of the ball.
They finished up 3 of 12 on third downs, but 2 of those came on the final touchdown drive. So at one point, they were
one third down.
They were
conversion.
1 for 10 on third down conversions, and you're just not going to win football games doing that. You're not going to help your defense out doing that. You have to at least convert 40%.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just a tough way to live. The running game is not, creating explosives or consistency for that matter. And I know everyone thinks, boy, this offense is so conservative. It's hard to watch. They took shots.
They didn't complete any of them.
They didn't complete any. But they had 6 deep balls, I think. And they were 0 for 6 on anything past 20 yards.
Yeah. The leading receiver in the game in terms of yards, in terms of receiving yards for the Steelers was Najee Harris.
Can't happen.
That can't happen. He had the one explosive play that they had basically, before Kyle Allen came into the game and had a 19-yard completion to Pat Freiermuth over the middle. Justin Fields' shots were the shots that he did take. Now there was one that Connor Hayward couldn't come down with down the sideline, but it wasn't a particularly good throw.
No, it wasn't.
It would have been
a really nice catch.
I had immediately telling me people because I said he overthrew him on that one. Oh no, that was a perfect pass. Hayward's got to catch that. Okay, Hayward, you're an NFL
he can catch it,
player. You're allowed to catch that one. But it was overthrown. I'm watching it when he threw it. I'm like, oh, Hayward's not going to get a hand on that one. It's overthrown. He was wide open.
This is the first you and I have talked about any of this, and I typed the exact same thing. I'm like, far from a great throw, could have been caught, would have been a really nice play by Hayward.
Yeah.
But that has to be completed.
And then right after that, you had the seam pass to your 6'7" tight end on a 6'1" safety.
Yeah.
And you throw it so high that he barely gets a fingertip on it.
Yeah.
Like put that where he can haul it in at. You might get an interference call because the DB is going to try to make a play on the ball.
I love the play call too.
Well, it was
get
fantastic.
The big guy rolling downhill and big target and just lay it up there, let him go be big.
But you threw it 5 feet over the 6'7" guy's head.
Now, everyone listening, no reason to lose your mind here. We're not just blaming Justin Fields that he was the whole reason they lost. But the deep shots were there, and they were dialed up on purpose against heavy boxes. And I think there's an argument that, well, maybe you should try him to Pickens or Austin, not Washington or Hayward. Okay, I'll listen to that, but they also suspect those things more.
Right.
I don't think Fields was the reason they lost by any stretch of the imagination, but we're just talking about those deep balls. There were shots to be had. There were big plays to be had that weren't made.
And he missed some open guys as well that were there.
When
you're, people want to go back and watch the All-22, you'll see guys running open that he didn't throw it to. It wasn't his best game.
No.
It wasn't anyone's best game.
You're right. The run game to me is still the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the inefficiency with the run game. I read your 10 thoughts, which everyone should do. And I didn't know it exactly until I read it, but you laid it out. That was their 4th out of 5 games where they've had a new starting 5 offensive linemen, and a great portion of them have either been their first start or second start. That's a hard way to live, man. And no matter what you're doing, let alone installing a new scheme and playing as much outside zone as they do, which frankly I have a little bit of problem with. I don't think Najee's much of an outside zone runner. He doesn't get to the edge as fast as what you need at that position. And these aren't excuses. These are just analysis. Some of the cluster injuries are starting to catch up. Originally it was O-line, and they kind of overcome it, but boy, it looked different if they could have started the 5 they wanted to from the start, or even just one injury. And then you see the edge outside linebacker cluster, which hopefully rectifies itself before Vegas, because you can't play Moon a lot of snaps. I mean, that's not going to cut it. And so you had 3 guys all go down short amount of time, from Highsmith to Leal and Herbig. And then I'm sitting there watching that game going, wish they had Cordell Patterson or Warren.
Yeah.
The cluster injuries at running back, just one of the two,
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you just, again, you had 18 carries for 70 yards in the first half of that game. And to me, like, they came out kind of as I expected with some designed runs for Justin Fields, and then they completely went away from it. And I don't know if some of the hits that he took.
He did take a couple shots.
He took a couple of shots, and I wonder if they thought, well, let's not do that. We don't want to put him in jeopardy here.
Which I understand that line of thinking, but you got to win the game too, you know?
Right. And, if you thought that was something that was going to work, then stick with it a little bit. It was too disjointed offensively.
Yeah.
And that hurt them in the first half because, again, your defense got 3 stops in the red zone.
Yeah. And one of them, the interception to me wasn't a great play by the Steelers. It was just a gift from the Cowboys.
Throw.
Right.
Awful throw.
Or miscommunication or whatever. They're yelling at each other on the sidelines, Lamb and Dak. And that was a gift. But if you have 2 red zone takeaways and a block kick, you should win 90% of those games.
They won the turnover battle 3-0.
They didn't play the 85 Bears either.
Right.
I mean, this wasn't a powerhouse team.
But offensively, they just didn't do enough. Again, when they had, I think, like 10 different guys, well, it was about 8 different guys actually caught footballs in that game yesterday, but only 2 of them were in were over 10 yards per catch.
Yeah.
You didn't challenge the defense enough down the field. And both of these guys, one was Najee Harris, the other one's Connor Hayward, who lined up in the backfield half the time.
Yeah, playing the fullback type role, right.
These are situations where
defenses in the league will let you can beat us throwing to Connor Hayward and Najee Harris. I mean, you're doing us a favor,
At the same time, so on the pregame show, I said, look, you can't, if I'm the Steelers defensively in this game, you can't let CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson beat you. It's got to be somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen Tolbert
beat you. Right. So I hesitate to say that I want to go down this road because it's bothering me. But I absolutely think, and we did this in the preview, don't let Pickens beat you. Don't let Lamb beat you. Freiermuth and Ferguson as well. Okay, we're going to scheme around those guys. And if Van Jefferson, Tolbert, Hayward, et cetera, are the guys that are most productive in this game, I'll roll the dice and see where they land. But I thought the Steelers did the Cowboys a massive favor, and I don't understand the usage of George Pickens. And maybe he's in trouble or he's in the doghouse or whatever the heck's going on. But when there were 2 receivers on the field, he was only out there for one of those snaps. It's hard to win that way,
I understand that.
Yeah.
So let me just throw you this analogy, and I don't know what happened with George Pickens.
I have no clue. But I just know it doesn't help you win.
So I'm umpiring a game on Saturday.
Okay.
And the pitcher can't throw a strike. He's 14. These are 14-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Can't throw a strike. After he walks, the base is loaded. Takes the ball, slams it on the ground, walks off the mound. Goes and the coach comes out of the dugout and he's, what's going on? What's going on? I'm done pitching. Okay. They only had 9 guys.
Oh, okay.
And the coach was like, well, you got to go back out there. And I immediately, my thought went to, if a kid that I was coaching did that, my team's on the field. I'm playing with 8.
You were going to play with a center fielder or
I'm
something.
I'm not going to put up with that kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
There comes a point for every coach where you reach a tipping point with a player where a line has to be drawn in the sand. And if you lose the game because of that, you got to live with it because one player can't be bigger than the team.
I agree with that as well.
And so if
he's not Michael Jordan either.
If Mike Tomlin made the decision that George Pickens was being a horse's ass and decided you're not playing unless we absolutely need you in 3 receiver sets, I got no issue with that. And if that cost him the game, so be it. Because you can't allow the player to dictate the behavior. You have to draw a line in the sand. And again, I know nothing about this. I did talk to some guys in the locker room. I talked to Pat Freiermuth after the game. And I mentioned to him, I said, hey, you and George only had two combined targets in the first half of that game. Pickens had 2, Freiermuth had none. I said, you guys are the 2 leading receivers on this team. And
what's up? Yeah.
And he didn't say anything had happened, but he did allude to, hey, I'm out there, I'm doing my job. That's part of being a leader on this team. If they throw me the football, they throw me the football. If they don't, I'm not gonna raise a big fuss about it. It is.
Did you say something like it was about being a good teammate?
It's about being a good teammate.
Right.
So if you are a jerk and you start yelling at teammates consistently about not getting the football, if I'm the head coach, I'm not gonna put up with that behavior. I'm just not. And this is the kind of stuff that, in the past, when Mike Tomlin's dealing with Antonio Brown.
I was say, who am I to judge someone that handled AB as well as he did?
Right.
I get that.
George Pickens ain't Antonio Brown.
No. Right.
So you're not bigger than the team. And if Mike Tomlin decided to draw a line in the sand, and that was his line in the sand, all right, we're gonna put you out there when we need you, but you're not gonna be out there all the time. Yeah. I got no problem with that.
And I bet that's how it went. I mean, I understand he's a volatile dude. There is a difference between 14-year-olds and paid professional athletes, and your only job is to win and not teach kids lessons. But there's also a lot of value.
Sometimes you have to do what's best for your locker room.
For the whole locker room, without question. That's what I'm about to say. There's a bigger picture thinking here, too, that if I let this guy slide and then the next one's, well, I'm not getting enough pass rush opportunities. I'm not getting enough carries. Right. Why aren't I playing in goal line?
What's happening with Romeo Doubs in Green Bay right now?
Right.
I'm not getting – dude, you're the leading targeted player on the team.
Yeah.
Same thing with Pickens here. Why are you raising a fuss about this? You're not bigger than the team.
My point, though, is I frankly don't care about why, but it made you easier to play against, for sure, And the lack of weaponry is problematic.
Again,
right
if you have to draw that line in the sand.
It might pay off in the playoffs. I mean, there's a bigger picture thinking here, without question, but didn't help them win on game day,
At the same
time, they need
time,
more playmakers.
They had the opportunity to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was there, much like the game against the Colts. In both instances, the game was there to win. You just needed to make a play.
I mean, this was getting out of the final play, which is bonkers,
And you didn't make it.
Because they played poorly. Again, I think that we're going to talk to Rob King soon, and I had a brief conversation with him earlier about the difference between the Colts game and the Cowboys game. And it was a lot, like you said, there was a large portion of the Colts game where I thought the Steelers were a better team.
Yeah.
This one, I never felt like they were ever in control of the game, or look out, here comes the pass rush, or boy, we're going to shut down whatever you want.
And we knew this Cowboys offense was going to be a handful.
Dak's good.
Yeah, that's why they pay him $50 million a year.
Yeah,
or 60 or whatever it is. They
and once he got you tired, you were in trouble.
Yeah,
And
I'll be honest with you, and I'm not singling this player out, but their trouble covering the slot is real.
Is real.
And
I think it might be the biggest weakness on
when
the team.
Beanie Bishop's on the field, he's targeted.
He's going to get targeted like crazy.
And it was, Turpin, 4 catches for 50 yards, working the slot. Every time I saw,
get used to it.
CeeDee Lamb out there, it was the same thing the week before with Indianapolis' slot guy. That's where teams are going to target you.
And numbers don't always tell the whole story, but going into that game, receivers that lined up in the slot, a lot of production. Receivers lined on the outside,
not so
very
much.
little production. Yeah. There's some trends here, folks. You're right.
Yeah, and other teams are aware of these things.
And I understand, appreciate, and I'm excited that Sutton's out there. But you're throwing an undrafted rookie in there as a slot and just hoping it works.
Yeah. It's not hoping. He was the last man standing. They had other guys that they were working in there in training camp, and they kept getting hurt.
Yeah.
And he was the last man standing.
But they didn't put a lot of resources into it. I mean, and I understand that because you can find these dudes, but even going back to Sullivan, I thought they would get an upgrade over him. Give me a $2 million free agent or someone that's been around the block. You know what I mean?
Well, they've got one waiting in Cam Sutton. Did they expect an 8-game suspension? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't fight it. Sutton didn't fight it. I get it because it was a bad look for Sutton. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
But the bottom line is Bishop's a problem right
It's a problem.
He's a problem.
It's a problem.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, so...
he's definitely their weakest starter.
Yeah. Let's get to a break. As Matt mentioned, we're going to be joined by Rob King in the next segment, so he'll give us his thoughts on what happened in Sunday night's game if he has recovered enough to be able to talk about it. But
he'll be just fine.
Yeah. He is Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Welcome back to The Drive. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and it is it's not a Victory Monday here in Pittsburgh, but we are joined now on the phone lines by the voice of the Steelers, Rob King. And Kinger, I hope you didn't cramp up like some of the players were doing last night during that game. I know there's a lot of extra talking in there for you. I hope you stayed hydrated.
Yes, I stayed hydrated for sure. I drank a lot of water last night, but no, it was a disappointing finish, obviously, and kind of really overall. I'm sure as you guys have been discussing, a disappointing game.
So you and I had a little chat earlier, and I think we both agree, but I think that I'd love to hear you elaborate on it, that this loss had a much different feel than the Colts loss, and probably a little more concerning.
I agree. I think that's exactly the way I felt about it. You could excuse the Colts game as big game for them. They're at home. They came out. They got into a fast start. I think the yards at one time were 207 to 45 in favor of the Colts. It was 13 first downs to 2. Then you bounce back from that, and if any number of single plays had gone your way, if Fields throws the ball out of bounds instead of taking that long sack, you kick a field goal. Well, you lost by a field goal. If Pickens, trying to extend for extra yards inside the 5 doesn't fumble, maybe you come away with a touchdown there. You have an opportunity to pick off a ball in the end zone. There's a fumble loose on the ground. You don't recover it. On and on and on. It felt like every single break in that game went the Colts' way. And if even one of those breaks, even one, had gone the Steelers' way, the Steelers would have won the game. Well, this game, you can't say that about. They got outgained 2-1 in yardage. They won the turnover battle 3-0.
Convincingly, yeah.
Yeah, and those turnovers are coming when the Colts or the Cowboys are threatening to score. A field goal gets blocked from a guy who's basically an automatic kicker, Aubrey. So there's 3 more points. So, you're looking at the Colts game saying, you could have got 3 here, 7 there, and easily could have won that game.
If the Cowboys had lost that game last night, they would have been the ones in the same situation the Steelers have been the week before.
Yeah.
Would have been worse. They would have been wringing their hands about how they could have outplayed this team so badly and shot themselves in the foot. I felt like the Colts game was, almost unlucky in a way. I mean, you don't expect to put the ball on the ground a couple times. You don't expect to have the number of things that could have gone their way not go your way. But when you step back, you're in the moment and you're watching this game and you're thinking, man, the Steelers came a whisker away from pulling this game off. Well, that would have been a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, that would have been, know what I mean? I mean, they got, they were long, punishing drives. The Steelers had several quick drives that didn't help the defense out at all. And, you look up at the end of the game, when you're outgained 2-1, you can look at that and say, there's no way you win a game like that. When you win the turnover battle 3-0, there's no way you lose a game like that. And yet, the Steelers were outgained. They had an opportunity for sure. But yes, this felt worse to me than the Colts game, because I didn't think that, except for a quick start by the Colts, I didn't think the Steelers were outplayed in that game. And I think that they dominated the second half. In this game, in no way, shape, or form did I ever feel like the Steelers were dominating that game.
This, to me, had to feel like what a lot of teams felt like when the Steelers had Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm not comparing Dak Prescott to Ben Roethlisberger, but he's much more a franchise-type quarterback.
Sure. Top 10 type of quarterback.
Yeah. Maybe even top 8 or wherever you want to put him.
Highest paid player in the league.
Yeah. And, you couldn't match that. He made some mistakes, but he made up for them.
And he knew when he had you on the ropes.
Yeah.
Like this defense is tired.
And he knew where to go with the football.
Right.
And he knew where, just the little things like that make the difference in a game. He made the big play at the end of the game when they needed it.
Right. Well, again, as you guys have sort of mentioned here a couple of times, that's what you expect when you have a quarterback like that. He's 31 years old. He's being paid $60 million. And he's not being paid $60 million out of the beneficence of Cowboys ownership. They're expecting him to make plays like this. That's where they expect him to be at this stage of his career. They expect him to be that type of a player. Now, he's really kind of been that way, throughout a large portion of his career. I mean, he was the offensive rookie of the year. He made Pro Bowls early on in his career. So he's been a really good player throughout his career. There are a set of expectations, and there is a team and an offense that is built around his skill set. The Steelers are not an offense that is built around the skill sets of a Dak Prescott, a quarterback. Where you've invested your money as the Steelers franchise is in your defense, and you're hoping that your defense can come up with, the plays that you need to win the game. Well, I mean, I'm sure if I'm on the defense, I'm thinking, well, we kind of did. We came away with 3 turnovers, By the same token, late in the game, all of the third down conversions for the Cowboys. So if you wanted to look at one thing the Steelers would, could have done, if they got off the field in any of those third downs, maybe it would have been a different outcome in the game. Certainly the Cowboys wouldn't have been piling up those yards, but it happened. And it happened because you have a quarterback in Dak Prescott who you're investing your money in. That if you want to, look, if you don't know anything about sports and you just want to see, hey, who is expected to succeed? Well, follow the money. See where the team is. If a baseball team's paying $25 million to a player, well, that guy's expected to produce. So if you're the Cowboys, you're expecting Dak Prescott to produce. And when the game became a game that could be put in his hands, he produced and he won the game for him.
100%. And the plan is pretty clear, going back to the offseason, is we're going to build an offensive line. We're going to build a running game and then go from there. We're not even sure the quarterback's going to be in 2 years. But if we have those things in place, the other things should fall into place a little easier. We'll pick up a second receiver in the process. But the running game isn't there. The foundation isn't being poured yet.
No, that you're absolutely right. Excuse me. And, there's a couple of things, and I don't want to be excusing what's happened with the Steelers. But when I look at this team, from a year ago, and you look at the quarterback play they were getting, and let's separate out the scheme for just a moment. And because you can tie the two together. You can say, well, the quarterback play, Pickett or Trubisky, wasn't succeeding because of the scheme. The scheme wasn't succeeding because of the quarterback, whatever. Let's just simplify it and look at the quarterback play. You're getting, 25th, 26th, 27th ranked quarterback rating out of your QB position. And you're floundering. You're trying to make the playoffs. And then you get solid quarterback play from Mason Rudolph. And suddenly you're in the playoffs. You go 3-0 with that. So I looked at that and thought, okay, you go 3-0 with a quarterback when you're getting solid quarterback play, good, solid quarterback play. Well, then in the offseason, you had a 9-time Pro Bowler, and then you turn around and make a trade for a guy, you expected to be your backup, but who certainly is intriguing. He started games in the NFL, and that's Fields. You're expecting an uptick in quarterback play. Frankly, they've gotten an uptick in quarterback play. If you look at the quarterback rating, Fields has been fine as a quarterback. And when you add other pieces, you add Patrick Queen, you add Deshaun Elliott, you add Dante Jackson, you have a well-regarded draft with very productive players. You do expect an increase in victories. At least I do. I think it's reasonable to expect that you should be a better team than you were a year ago because you've gotten better at a lot of areas and you've added to your quarterback position. You are a better team at the quarterback position. So to have these last two losses, it's tough because we all know that the schedule is going to get much, much more difficult as the season wears on. I think the expectation that this team, is better, should be better, could be better. I think those are realistic expectations, and that's what makes these last two losses tough.
Is the schedule more difficult down the stretch, Rob? Because Cleveland looks like garbage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Washington's good all of a sudden.
Washington's good, but the Raiders aren't. Like,
who knows?
Cincinnati can't stop anybody. They're one of.
Is Denver good?
I don't. They look
Is
okay.
Good?
Yeah, I mean,
is Atlanta good?
They look better than they did.
Those wins look better now than they did then.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL changes so quickly that you just don't know what a team is going to be a week from now, let alone 2 months from now.
Right. Yeah. And they're going to be competitive in the AFC North games.
Right. It's one of the reasons I don't get too worked up about the schedule. I mean, I did throw that out there, but it is a reason that, when people talk about how daunting the schedule is, and I understand that. I mean, the Chiefs, the Chiefs are going to be good, right? There's teams are going to be good, but everything changes so much from year to year that, frankly, to get a little off schedule here, I wondered how good Houston would be after last year, right? You get a last place schedule and you sneak up on some teams, and I was like, let's see how good they are when they play a first place schedule. Well, turns out they're pretty good. Or they certainly look like it. But when you break down statistics, and I know the three of us love to look at statistics and trends and where is a team, I think it's really difficult to put a lot of weight in statistics until you get to a certain point of the season, maybe the midway point, because you just don't know. I mean, last year's, and we've seen this. I mean, look at teams like the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl, the Rams when they won the Super Bowl, they go from worst to first. And teams have done the opposite. When Jacksonville came in here and beat the Steelers in the playoffs, I thought, man, they have the look of a team that's got some staying power. They got 7 or 8, Pro Bowlers. Well, look what happened to them. They've never been able to replicate that kind of success. So it's year to year. It's also game to game. And I think within the course of a season, we'll see where things shake out. I'm still optimistic that this is a team that's improved from a year ago, a team that went 9-8. And why am I optimistic? Because of the reasons I just said. It's a better roster. Yes, you need, you're starting to look more and more like you need another receiver. Now, again, we're saying that, and when we first started talking about this, a lot of the thought was, well, what happens? You could maybe get by scheme-wise. What happens if you lose a guy like George Pickens? Well, at the same time, what happens if you lose a guy like Jalen Warren? What happens if you lose a guy like Cordero Patterson? Those have a cumulative effect because you're not running the ball as effectively. Warren can be a very good third down back for this team in addition to his other duties. And so, the least sort of ebbing of one position is going to affect the offense as a whole. So, they've withstood a lot of injuries, but a lot of teams have withstood a lot of injuries. And so, I think I'd be feeling, I think everybody'd be feeling better if you found a way to win that Colts game when I think you were clearly the better team and improved to 4-1. After this loss, you could have taken it. But now all of a sudden, this game against the Raiders seems like it's important. Like, you want to stem this thing. You don't want to be a team that is capable of losing 3 in a row, especially when it's 3 in a row to teams. The Colts, I think, are kind of a mid-range team. And the Cowboys, maybe they're a little better than that, but maybe not right now with the injuries they have. So, and the Raiders, I think, are certainly in that, lower sort of third tier of the NFL. So this looms to me as an important game for the Steelers coming up on Sunday.
Rob, you mentioned the quarterback play. You mentioned injuries. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a certain quarterback who has been injured, who started to ramp things up last week in terms of his practice participation. What do you think Mike Tomlin does with the quarterback position this week? Not what you would do. What do you think Mike does with this?
I think this is obviously a guess on my part. We don't know, and we don't know.
We're all guessing at this point. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, Russell Wilson has not been elevated to the number 2 quarterback status yet. I mean, he's
I don't think Mike
quarterback yet.
I don't think Mike would elevate him to number 2 without announcing something in terms of a starter going forward. Because if he's number 2, then he's healthy enough to play. And if he's healthy enough to play, then you have to announce some kind of decision about who your quarterback is. There wasn't enough practice last week for Russell Wilson. Yes, he did 11-on-11 stuff. But again, that was part of the ramping up process. He was still listed as limited last week in practice. So I think it's going to be very interesting tomorrow when Mike Tomlin holds his press conference and says, okay, Russ has been cleared to return as a full participant this week. Okay, well, now what then?
Very interesting.
Right. Yes, very interesting. And he has deftly, I think in some degrees, and rightly in some degrees, not announced or not anointed who his starter is going to be. There are times in any sport, like, for example, let's say baseball. You got a 5-man rotation. It's doing pretty well. You called somebody up. He's doing well. And now you got somebody, hey, 8 days from now, this guy's coming off the injured list. Then what do you do?
Then what do you do? Yeah.
And general managers and managers will always say something like, these things have a tendency to work themselves out. And you almost want to make them have to make a decision because you're curious. Well, what are you going to do, though?
But that's why the Steelers never announce anything until they have to announce it.
That's right. And you know why? Because these things usually do have a way of working themselves out. I mean, it's just the way, you're like, well, what are you going to do then? Well, okay. So I think, to go back to your question, I think it will be Justin Fields for another week. This is purely speculation on my part. Obviously, I have no idea. I think it could be Justin Fields for another week because I don't think he's done anything to lose the job. I think he's been solid. I think there have been signs of improvement from Fields. I think he's an intriguing guy. And I also think that once you make the move, it is easier to make the move with the evidence you have have the team behind it as well. It's one of those positions where it's nice to have the team behind it and move on. Now, having said that, go back to Super Bowl I, and
wow, you're taking us way
Terry
back.
Brad, Hanratty's, so you start with because it was the Steelers' first Super Bowl. You start with Joe Gilliam, and then you bench him, and you bring in Terry Bradshaw, and then Hanratty's in there, then Gilliam's in there, and finally it's Bradshaw again, and it's musical chairs. You're going back and forth. I think Hanratty might have been part of that mix. Anyway, you're going back and forth to the quarterback position, and then you finally settle on somebody, and you wind up winning the Super Bowl. So that sort of undercuts what I'm saying now, which is that I think once you make that move, you want everybody behind it. And if right now, Fields has gotten you to 3-2. If you were 5-0, I don't even think we'd be having this discussion. If you were 4-1, I'm not sure you'd be having this discussion. I think everybody would be behind Fields. But the Steelers and Mike Tomlin are going to do whatever they think is going to be the best thing to help them win football games. That's why they went out and made some of the moves they made in the offseason. Not that they wouldn't do that anyway, but they pretty much said, I think they actually did say, it's time to start winning in the postseason again. So who is the best guy to help you win in the postseason? And that's who the Steelers will go with. I do think there's something to be said about, or could if Russell Wilson is healthy. I think there is something to be said with, giving Fields an opportunity to either firmly play his way in or firmly play his way out. And I don't know as I've seen either one of those things happen.
So we mentioned Jaylen Warren earlier, and I don't want our audience to forget how good he was last year and really how good he's been in a Steeler uniform. And this isn't Fields versus Wilson or Najee versus Warren, but boy, would I welcome Warren back with open arms right now. His ability to get to the edge, explosive runs, protection, receiving mismatches. I mean, a shot in the arm that this
offense. Haven't gotten to see it this year.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, don't forget what he might have been their best offensive player last year. I mean, he is a really, really good back that would give this offense a shot in the arm, in my opinion.
Totally agree. And you mentioned all the ways he helps. This is not a guy who helps you in one dimension. He's a guy that helps you in all the ways, Matt, that you just listed. And I think that this, when you look at, again, and it's just, last year the Steelers had really good luck on the offensive line health-wise. They got decimated at inside linebacker. But they built a roster that I felt was really deep at certain areas or had enough depth at certain areas that you really felt good about it. Now, nobody feels good about just a rash of injuries. So you look at the running back position, man, you got Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, then you signed Cordero Patterson? Really? He's your third back? That's great. Until two guys are gone with an injury. And they could have used him in this game against the Cowboys. You look at the outside linebacker position. Wow, that is – you got Herbert,
loaded,
third
right.
guy. What a tremendous luxury. Well, now you're down to your fifth guy. So all of a sudden that's not a luxury anymore. And we've talked, at length about the offensive line. You got 10 guys you feel great about. Yeah, well, 3 of them are now hurt, gone for the year probably. So they are their depth at positions in which they had enviable depth is being challenged. And not to mention, by the way, Corey Trice at the cornerback position, who's really starting to come along and show nice things for the Steelers too. So, but again, nobody's going to feel sorry for the Steelers. The Steelers can't feel sorry for themselves and don't feel sorry for themselves. Injuries are part of the game. This happens, but yes, Matt, I love Jaylen Warren. I just think he's a terrific back, and I think he's a guy that I hope we see him healthy, because he really wasn't healthy coming into game one. He wasn't healthy when he played again. And so, again, if he has to sit for a couple more weeks until he's fully healthy, I don't know what his status is, whatever it takes to get him back out there. But he is a guy that, yes, you're talking about an elite offensive weapon for your team, in particular because the style you play makes the running back position shine.
Kinger, we got to let you go. It would be nice, though, to have either Warren or Patterson available for this upcoming game. That would be nice for sure.
Or the last game.
Especially against a Dallas team that did actually kick the ball and allowed you to return them.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
I know. Would it have been nice to see Patterson return a kick? My goodness.
Yeah, because the Cowboys have done that all season long. They have not been afraid to allow teams to get returns against them. We'll let you go. Our guest has been Rob King, the voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. Welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. Of course, you can hear The Drive every Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. right here on the Steelers Nation Radio. You can also listen to us on Fox Sports Pittsburgh and Steelers official mobile app. You can download that right here on YouTube as well. So watch the show. You can listen to it at work. You can just you don't have to watch. Right. You can just turn the sound up and put your headphones on. Your boss won't even know what you're doing.
Yep, spread the word too.
So Matt,
leave us comments if you want. Do whatever you want.
I just asked Rob King how he thinks Mike Tomlin will handle the QB situation this week. Now I'm going to pose that question to you. What do you think happens at quarterback this week?
Not what I would do.
Not what you would do, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
What do you think happens here with the quarterback situation?
I think it's as good an opportunity as you're going to have to make the switch. You know, that Justin's been great for us. He's led us to a winning record. He couldn't be happier, but Russell Wilson was brought in here to be the starter, and now he's ready to do so against an opponent that he's faced twice a year, in Denver.
Last couple of years,
Yep. And
so how about
the offense is sputtering, and we think this is the right guy for the job.
He started 5 games in his career against the Raiders, completing 69% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, a passer rating of 102.4.
Surprising, he only played 7.
Well, he missed.
Well,
missed. They
played
finished
4 in the last 2 years.
They finished with the Raiders last year after he had
so
been
he played
benched.
3 in the Broncos uniform.
Yeah,
which are the most relevant.
Yeah,
because staffs have changed. I mean, 10 years ago, Raiders are different than this year Raiders.
Right.
Right. It's not even like they're this extreme challenge. Like playing against Lamar the first time or something like that. I mean,
but he's gone into Las Vegas and played against these guys, and has been in that
understands
situation.
what Max Crosby's about. And side note, I'm not sure if Christian Wilkins is going to play in this game.
Doesn't look like
clearly their second best defensive player, so the Steelers might have dodged another bullet there. But he probably has a feel for Pierce as he's a defensive-minded guy and how the organization wants to run, all those things. And frankly, if the opponent were the Chiefs, or a bad example, if it were the Eagles or Bengals or
that's
whomever,
why the Cowboys were fine. Fields has played against the NFC teams more often. He'd seen Mike Zimmer's defense.
My point was, I don't care who the opponent is. I think the switch makes a lot of sense, which isn't a knock on Fields. I'm
Not
still
at all.
really intrigued.
Yeah.
And if Russ starts, I may even trot Fields out there like we talked about in the preseason and be a little more aggressive with his designed runs, because you got the safety blanket there who's going to control things. And we've talked about this a lot, even just today. Dak is a veteran. Even Flacco off the couch
is a
veteran and understands where pressures are coming from, or we have them in their nickel and they should really be in base. And I'm not letting them get in base.
We're going to hurry up and get to the line of scrimmage and run the next play.
Yep. Or I'm going to switch my cadence here because this guy's jumping. Or, boy, they're going to send a corner crash. I'm going to hit the hot route slant behind them, blah, 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 blah. Or, they're fatigued. I mean, Dak knew that the Steeler D was pretty spent last night, and he is not letting them off the field.
No, and that's the thing. That's why you get a veteran quarterback.
Yeah.
In those situations. Look what Kirk Cousins did in the situation, on Thursday night's game. I know it was but he got in his situation like, okay, I got Tampa Bay on the ropes here, and he finished them off.
And he finished them off.
Yeah.
And I think
that's what veteran quarterbacks do.
And that's why you called Wilson in the first place.
Right. Because you wanted a veteran quarterback to run your young offense.
Yep. So let's say, May, June, something like that. If I told you Wilson's been hurt the whole first 5 games, can't play, hasn't been able to really play since he's been here. Like, oh, man, hope they hit on Fields. Who knows? That could be a disaster. They might be 0-5. They might be 1-4. So it's been successful. Like you've learned a lot, and it doesn't mean Justin, we don't like you.
Right.
You're just a backup. We don't
That's
see any future
it's
for
not
it.
a hard sell at all to
Right.
Fields, because if you're from Mike Tomlin, you just go, hey, Justin, you knew this coming into this situation that you were number 2. Russ was always in quote unquote pole position.
Yeah.
I had named Russ the starter at the start of the season. We like what you've done. We respect what you've done, but we're gonna give Russ a shot here.
Yeah. It's not like you're trotting out Deshaun Watson every week and his tape is horrible. And well, he's the guy that's the veteran. That's our starter.
Yeah.
We're sticking with him. We haven't seen Wilson yet.
Yeah,
we want to see him.
And it's a different situation to me than going to Wilson and saying, Russ, we're going to stick with Justin, but we're going to need you at some point.
Yeah.
That's a different feel. Russell Wilson's still a captain on this team. His teammates voted him a captain.
Yeah, without ever being in the huddle with him.
Right.
You know what I mean? In real environment.
Yeah.
This isn't Ben 12 years in or whatever. Right. I don't think it's an easy decision.
It's not an easy decision.
I understand both sides.
Yeah.
But I don't think this organization will look at it like, what's best for 2026? I think it'll be what's best for this upcoming week and what gets us the best chance to try to win Super Bowls.
And this just assumes that Wilson has been cleared medically.
Of course, right.
To go out and be a full participant in practice. He has to be a full participant in practice before any of this happens.
And if you weren't listening last week, shame on you for 6 weeks, of course. But it sure sounded like he's doing more and more. Like that's pretty wide. That's not a team secret or anything.
Right.
He's ramping up for sure, and we knew this day was coming. Well, this is the time.
Yeah, the day is here, and to Rob's point, if they're 5-0 or they're 4-1, are we having this discussion? Probably not. Maybe they slow play this a little bit more with Russ, but you have lost 2 games in a row.
Yeah, and it's not Fields' fault, but he also hasn't propelled you to victory either. I thought he played really well with Indy. I thought he almost propelled him to victory in that game, which was really encouraging. Do you think when we get together at 4:00 tomorrow, we might know that answer?
I think we'll have a better idea of which way Tomlin is leaning with this.
Of course, somebody's going to ask him.
No, he's going to be asked about it, and he may, he's going to come out and say, "Well, Russ is, cleared to be a full participant in practice this week." If he says that, now the questions are, what's going to happen here, and this may be the situation where he could play it off and said, "I'm going to make that determination on Friday." Kind of what I expect.
There's no reason to let the Raiders know anything.
No, absolutely not. But you'll have
everyone
idea.
in practice will have a pretty good idea.
You'll have a pretty good idea in practice, watching practice for sure.
Right,
and the quarterbacks have talked on Thursday. That may get pushed back to Friday as well.
Okay.
For the competitive advantage.
Yeah. You know all the tricks.
The Raiders are in the same situation right now.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Antonio Pierce had a press conference
It's less
today.
exciting, but they are in the exact same or similar situation.
Gardner Minshew got pulled in the third quarter.
Second time this year.
For the second time after throwing his second interception in that game. They go to Aiden O'Connell, and O'Connell goes out, and he throws an interception. So they have no clarity whatsoever.
I mean, frankly, I don't think they have a quarterback.
Right.
They don't have the quarterback. I mean, that's a perfect example. If you have 2, you have none. Well, I think that's what's going on there. More than any city of the 32, to be very honest with you.
Whichever way this would happen to go, I'm fine with it. If you want to get right, if Mike Tomlin comes out and says, I'm rolling with Justin, we like what he's done, we like what the trajectory and all that stuff. Okay, I get it.
I totally get it.
If he comes out and says, we're going with Russell Wilson, he's the veteran guy, this is what he was brought here to do, he's healthy, I get it.
I get it. Yeah, 100%. I see both sides. We talked about this a lot last week, and I really was torn last week. This week, after another loss, I lean a little stronger towards Wilson than I did, exactly 1 week ago.
For a lot of the veteran quarterback stuff that we're talking about, that's why he was brought here.
Yeah.
To help recognize defenses, to help the thing that he does, and they tried to do this early in that game, was loosen up the defense with some shots down the field off of play action and things of that nature, and they didn't complete them. And Dallas saw that.
Like Kirk Cousins is a great example. They have a first-round quarterback sitting in the room in Atlanta, too. Cousins and Wilson were drafted in the same class, and Wilson's had a better career. Cousins has been a better player lately. Cousins threw for 500 and some yards, though. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. They're not apples to apples, but you know what I'm saying?
Going to hit those hot routes, going to recognize what the defense is trying to do, get the ball where it needs to go, those kind of things.
Yeah, 100%.
So, anyways, that's going to do it for hour number 1 of the drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with hour number 2 right after this. And we are back. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, You've been fired as our DFS consultant.
Not over yet. Give me one more day.
So our lineup this week, right now we have 94.74 points. We need to get to about 120 to get to the money line here. We do have Travis Kelce going tonight, so it is possible.
It is possible, but that'd be a rather large evening.
It would be a big one.
But he's
It's
done it
capable.
before, and he's done it before. Yeah.
Especially
No
in
worries.
big settings here. So we had Justin Fields in the lineup as our quarterback, 34.5% ownership in the league that we're in here, and 15.94 points. Wasn't the worst day, but wasn't the best.
No, it wasn't.
Najee Harris, 34.9% ownership. So a lot of people
were
agree
hitting
with
the
us
Steelers, huh?
that he was undervalued, and he had 77 total yards from scrimmage. Just 2 catches, though.
The receiving stuff's been great. The rushing stuff's been terrible.
I thought there would be more meat on the bone as a receiver there.
Yeah.
Because it's working.
It's working.
When they throw him the football, he's made big splash plays the last couple of weeks.
And he's going out on a lot more routes the last
Yeah.
2 weeks. And part of that's because Warren and Patterson have been banged up, of course. But he's a good receiver. The running game can't get going.
Yeah. Derrick Henry,
He's not scoring
19.6%
touchdowns.
ownership.
Fantasy. Right?
16.6 points. Wasn't the big a day as we thought. He
He
have
didn't
the long
shred them, but right.
Yeah, he had the long run at the end to win it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Got tackled just short of the end zone.
Yeah, which doesn't help for fantasy, but
No. Jaden Reed was okay. 54.1% ownership, though.
wow.
Yeah.
Our guys were popular.
13.7 fantasy points tomorrow, or in that game. 4 catches for 78 yards, 19 rushing yards.
He's a high-quality player.
Yeah, he just didn't score. Our Dontavian Wicks play, 35.8% ownership at just $5,000. He had 2 catches for 20 yards. But
I'd go right back to that
7
well.
targets in the game.
Yep, I think he had 3 clear drops, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was getting open. Drops can be very fluky. I doubt that's going to plague him. I would go right back to that well if it's the same price, give or take.
The one that hurt us bad was Nico Collins.
Yeah, he got hurt.
16.2% ownership, so he wasn't heavily owned.
Mm-hmm. He's expensive.
2 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown, and he pulls his hamstring in like the first quarter.
First quarter, right.
Yeah. So he got 15.8 points,
Don't
which
blaming
is great.
me for that one.
I'm not blaming him for that one. I'm just saying that one hurt us.
At least he scored. I mean, he
Yeah.
could have pulled the hamstring before the touchdown.
Yeah,
and
on
then
the touchdown
Right,
run,
right,
yeah.
right.
Eric All had 2 catches for 10 yards, but he was only $2,700. 10% ownership on him. So
We went super cheap there, taking a shot in the dark.
yeah, to allow us to go get Kelce, which
Kelsey
sets us
and
up for tonight.
Henry and Nico.
The Broncos defense was the right call.
Oh, the Broncos D's good.
They had 16 points.
Surtain had a 100-yard receiver.
Unfortunately, 48.9% ownership.
That's the problem.
That's the
We don't
problem.
have that many misses. I mean,
We didn't have any huge hits.
We didn't
though.
have any huge hits,
There's only
right.
one thing that was on fire here, and that was the Broncos defense.
that's what I'm saying. But half the world has them.
Yeah. Now I also put together a lineup, and it is done.
We were into Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, Tucker
didn't
Kraft
go that. Didn't
was
go with him, right?
Whoops, I hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
there.
What'd you do?
So I actually started Tucker Kraft,
Did you?
and that one worked out. I'm in the money right now as we go into the Monday night game. I am done, but I had Tucker Kraft scoring 24 points, 35.7% ownership in this particular.
That's strong. Musgrave was out.
I also started Jordan Love at quarterback
Okay.
instead.
So you hit the Packer passing game, but in a different approach.
Yeah,
You made the better choices.
I did start Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, unfortunately.
Oh wow, you used 4 Packers in your lineup.
Yeah, I went heavy on the
man.
Packers. I thought
Okay.
they would throw the ball effectively, and
Yeah,
they kind of
they mostly did, yeah.
I also started Derrick Henry, but
Okay.
I went to Trey Sermon at $5,700, only 8.9% ownership,
Wow.
which I thought was really low. He had 18.3 points.
Yeah. Goodson played a fair amount, but that doesn't matter. Sermon got the
Sermon got
money
the
stuff.
He got
and
the touchdown, and he got the 6 receptions.
There was some bad defense in that game too.
Yeah, I did go with DK Metcalf at 7,000. He only got 8.5
I
points.
don't think he blew up, right?
That one to me, like the Steelers lost to the Cowboys at home.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas is supposed to be a good football team this year.
Yeah.
Seattle lost to the Giants at home.
Weird game too.
Badly.
Yeah, badly. There was 2 returns. for
trailed the whole
touchdown.
way.
They were losing
Yeah.
from the bat. Yeah.
That-
They probably couldn't protect.
yeah, just a bad one. As I mentioned, I started Tucker Kraft. In the flex spot, I started Antonio Gibson, 2.4% ownership.
He started, but he didn't really start.
It was only $5,100. So he ended up with 52 rushing yards and one catch for 4 yards.
Okay.
So it was 6.6 points, but it could have been better than that. And I started the Broncos defense as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So
a lot of carryover, but
yeah, there's some similarities there. Right. But just if I
real quick on Gibson, I said they demoted Ramondre Stevenson
for the fumbled. Gibson got the first carry of the game, and
then they said, "Hey, Ramondre, you're in."
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much that taught him a lesson, but he was good. Stevenson was good.
Looking at this week's top performers,
there were actually passing yards.
There were
a whole lot of them.
It was a big week for big plays across the league.
Yep. On defense too.
Yeah.
Now I think about it.
Kirk Cousins, 509, 4 touchdowns, was great in that game.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, 392, 5 touchdown passes. Really bad interception though that kind of cost them the game. Late in the fourth quarter.
Humongous game. I'm sure we'll go around the league and talk real football stuff here in division, but yeah. The offense is good, but that was a big mistake.
Trevor Lawrence, 371 and 2 touchdowns.
On his 25th birthday.
There you go.
Last team that needed a win.
His first big game of the season, really.
It's a little bit promising.
Flacco in that same game, 359 and 3 touchdowns, but
not a lot of defense in that game.
Not a lot of defense played in that game, and he is not going to be probably starting next week.
Doesn't sound like it. Which really hurts Downs and Pittman and Pierce. All those guys did well.
Dak Prescott, 352, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and the fumble. Again, a big yardage day. Lamar Jackson, 348 and 4 touchdown passes. C.J. Stroud, 331 and a touchdown.
Even after Nico went down, kind of shifted days.
Although it wasn't as good once Nico was out of it. They jumped out to the big lead and held on to win.
Yeah. Nico's been one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah, won that 23-20. Caleb Williams, 304 and 2 touchdowns. That came against Carolina, though.
Yeah. Starting to look better, though. I mean, him and Bo Nix are, I'm not saying they're out of the woods, but they're looking like they've been in the league a little bit.
Yeah. Geno Smith had 284 and a touchdown, but to your point, was sacked 7 times in that game. Stafford had 260 and a touchdown with an interception. Daniel Jones was serviceable, 257 and 2 touchdowns.
He's never bad for fantasy.
He had like 12 carries in the game, too.
Always.
That's what I thought you'd see from Fields this week. Was
more
running of the football.
Me a little bit more.
Yeah. You want more of that. Looking at some of the top rushing for the week. If I can get the what's going on? Okay, here it comes. All right, so we only had, with all that passing, 3 guys top 100 rushing yards.
Okay.
Tyrone Tracy.
I say they're not the usual names necessarily either.
18 for 129, didn't score. So funny story about this. I picked up Tyrone Tracy last week in our league.
Yeah.
On Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember which day. And I almost picked up Kyle Pitts because somebody cut him loose.
Thursday night, right?
And I'm like, I'm going to pick up Tracy because it looks like Singleton might not play. Well, then Singleton practiced on Friday. And I'm like,
and Pitts had a nice day the night before.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm going to pivot here. It doesn't look like I might have needed a running back to start, but then Taylor got declared out.
And you had Sermon.
And I had picked up Sermon as well. And then I made a trade as well for Jerome Ford.
So you had dudes you could play.
I had 2 guys I could play. I'm like, I don't need Tracy. He's probably not the long-term answer. So I cut him loose. And
you never got to play a game with your squad.
He was on my practice squad for a day.
He's going to get picked up this week.
Somebody had picked him up already.
Well, I just mean he'll probably be in every league.
After I cut him,
our league, right.
After I cut him, my son picked him up. He must have said, "Oh, if my dad picked him up, he must be good." So,
did he start him?
I don't know if he did or not. I didn't look, but he had 129 yards. You know, he's a good pass catching back. He was a wide receiver at Purdue.
Singletary's been better than I expected, but he's not that much of a roadblock for this guy either.
Yeah, right. Kyron Williams, 22 for 102 and a touchdown.
He's been consistent. He's better than I thought he'd be this year.
Yeah.
Count on him.
Bigsby, 13 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. He outsnapped Travis Etienne in that game.
Yep. I think he is quickly, slowly, officially becoming their number one. It might be a Najee Warren type 60-40 type deal.
Etienne is the receiving back.
Yeah.
He's not great at it.
I also heard some people saying, why not send Etienne to the Cowboys or, Kansas City? I mean, you're not winning anything this year. You might have found it back.
Yeah, you might be able to find a receiver there, too, if you're the Steelers. Chuba Hubbard had 13 for 97 and a touchdown. We talked about him in our DFS lineup. He just does that every week.
Yeah. I wonder what Brooks' timeline is and how that'll affect things. They lost their center, you mentioned.
Yeah. Henry had 15 for 92 and a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson, 12 for 89 and a touchdown. So,
if you're drafting right now, would Henry be your first back off the board? Saquon's pretty good,
Saquon would be pretty good. He catches the ball a lot more.
Well, for sure.
Yeah. I'd probably go with Saquon.
I think they're the top 2, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe Kyren Williams.
Yeah, he's pretty solid. It's not Brees. It's not
Those guys are doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah. Jordan,
Kenneth Walker's a sneaky one, by the way.
He barely touched the ball last week.
He's getting passes thrown his way now.
Yeah. Jordan Mason had 14 for 89 but didn't score.
Big fumble late.
Yeah, it wasn't a big game for him. Rico Dowdell against the Steelers had 20 for 87. That's his backfield now.
Oh, it should be.
I don't think he's very good.
The other guys are just worse.
Yeah. And
Zeke's shot.
I talked to Deshaun Elliott after the game, and I'm like, they finished with 109 rushing yards. He goes, yeah, they got into their 4-minute offense, and we're still running the football. We didn't necessarily expect that. We're thinking they're going to continue to pass the ball, and it just
Yeah.
So there were some draws in there where he picked up some
No,
yardage.
Dowdell's got a little bit of juice.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a bad player.
Jalen Wright had 13 for 86.
Well, Chan got hurt.
Chan got a concussion.
Mostert was out.
Yeah.
I think Mostert's due back next week.
Yeah.
They may have a bye next week.
We'll see about a Chan with the
He's a
concussion. So
protocol,
don't run out, and I'm sure Jalen Wright was a hot pickup, or a hot draft guy. I don't know that this opens the door for him to do anything
The
more.
offense is still bad.
It's broken.
But they did create some explosives, though, which was kind of the difference in that game.
James Conner had 19 for 86 in that win over the 49ers.
As importantly, he had every running back touch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened like 2 or 3 times all year. Every running back touch.
Absolutely. Let's move on here to the top receivers of the week. And, well, given that there were so many 300-yard passers, there were 11 100-yard receiving games and some guys that just missed. Jamar Chase, 10 for 193 and 2 touchdowns. Baltimore's pass defense is a problem.
It's a problem. It absolutely is.
Drake London in the Thursday night game, 12 for 154 and a touchdown. That was a nice.
Yeah.
I have Drake London in our league, and that's a nice way to start the week off.
and I think that's what we expected when we drafted him.
Yeah.
He's a really good player.
Ayuk finally had a game, 8 for 147. We talked about him in DFS and didn't pull the trigger on it.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that Ayuk and Chase and some of these holdout guys are now. I remember why we paid him. Right?
Yeah. Alec Pierce, 3 for 134 and a touchdown. Somebody was telling me last night, I got to start starting Alec Pierce. I'm like, that could be fool's gold.
He's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
But Richardson doesn't kill him because they'll chuck it.
They still take the deep shots.
He hurts down.
You just don't get a ton. He's this generation between him and the guy in New Orleans.
Shaheed.
Yeah, Shaheed. They're this generation's
Deshaun Jackson. Ted Ginn.
Yeah.
Those type of guys. Right.
Jones from the Raiders back in the day.
Sure.
And
you might hit big.
You also got to be. Yeah. You might get a 0.
Yeah, you're not going to nickel and dime it. They're not Wan'Dale Robinson.
How about this one, Matt? Darius Slayton. We've talked about Darius Slayton quite a bit on this show as a potential Steelers trade target. 8 for 122 and a touchdown with the rookie out.
Got a big target share with Neighbors out.
Yeah, he basically became Neighbors.
Exactly.
And he produced like Neighbors.
It was like 35% or something.
Yeah.
Went his way.
He's a good player.
He's a good player.
And he's not making a ton of money.
Yeah.
And when Neighbors comes back, and it's a concussion for Neighbors, so we'll see. And it'll be over 2 weeks for their next game.
I bet you could pry him away still.
Yeah, I mean that would be a guy that I would look at again.
Yeah,
he's a good football player.
He'd be a starter here.
Every time he gets an opportunity, he produces.
Mm-hmm.
He just for whatever
they also
reason.
drafted Hyatt last year.
Yeah.
That I think they want to see more of, and I think Slayton. I'm not sure if his contract's up after this year or next.
Yeah,
but it's not crazy.
Yeah,
after this year.
Yeah, and they renegotiated that to lessen the hit because they talking about maybe he wasn't going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brian Thomas. 5 for 122 and a touchdown. He keeps scoring those long touchdowns.
Yeah, he also goes up and gets it in the short red zone, too. And he scored a lot of touchdowns this year, I think.
Terry McLaurin, 4 for 112. Didn't score, but the usage is ticking up again.
Oh, yeah. He's clearly the one in what's become a really good offense.
Yeah. Zay Flowers had 7 for 111, but didn't score. All their receiving touchdowns went to the basically the tight ends.
And not Andrews.
And not Mark Andrews.
Andrews got a little more.
Charlie Kohler have 2.
I know Likely had 1, and Kohler had at least 1.
I think Kohler might have had 2.
That's quite possible.
Because Bateman had the other one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they threw 4.
Yeah. Darnell Mooney, 9 for 105 and 2 touchdowns in that Thursday night game.
He looks like the guy from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot. DJ Moore, 5 for 105.
Is Mooney an every week starter?
He's a 3.
So close.
Yeah.
I mean, in the neighborhood, depending what you got.
He's a solid 3.
Yeah.
DJ Moore, 5 for 105 and 2 scores.
Against his old team.
Yep. And then Garrett Wilson had 13 for 101 and a touchdown, 7.8 yards per catch.
But that's a good thing. I mean, like, I know people are frustrated. Like, he got 13 catches and didn't score. He shot 200 yards.
That's kind of what he did last year, though.
But if he's getting that much target share, he'll be fine. You know what I mean?
But you
they throw him
worry,
over and over, and he's always open.
They're the team that the Jets need to trade for Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers wants it. He wants to go there, make this happen. What the hell happens to Garrett Wilson?
Well,
now?
that would be a different world.
Yeah.
If I'm Adams, I would have no interest in going to the Jets, but except for my buddies there.
Rodgers doesn't look good.
Yes and no. I mean, he doesn't.
He looks like an old quarterback that doesn't want to hit.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, the ball still. He can still sling it. He's not going to be the playmaker. He's not going to hold it like he used to.
He still does the stuff where he's jumping in the air to throw the football.
I know.
And
he's 25.
I don't know that his arm strength is what it was.
And the other thing that's dwindled is, I always talked about Rodgers in his prime, like before I even knew who Pat Mahomes was. And I was like, if you lined up every Hall of Fame quarterback and showed me all their highlight tapes, I might pick Rodgers. But if I showed all their low-light tapes, I might pick Rodgers. But now
the lowlights are there.
Yeah, now
and he also
he's
used to
mistakes.
If it was 3rd and 5 and everything was covered, he would run for the 5 yards. And he would get 6.
Yeah.
And then duck out of bounds and never take a hit.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that anymore either.
Oh, no, those days are gone.
Those days are gone.
Right.
So it's all passing the ball and,
And it's probably going to get shorter, like Ben did at the end. And that Wilson stat line might be what you see a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of Deontay-esque, But if you're throwing him that many passes to that talented player, he can be on my fantasy team anytime.
Some guys who just missed. Brock Bowers had 8 for 97 and a touchdown. Steelers are going to see him this week, and he is their passing game.
He's their passing game. Well, Myers has done pretty well, too, with Adams sitting, but it's those two. And Bowers is very impressive.
Justin Jefferson got targeted like crazy in that game against the Jets, had 6 for 92. He must have drawn like 7 penalties.
I would say, I think we were thinking the exact same thing. I was like, throw about 200 yards of deep DPIs on top of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Holds, and they just were just trying to do whatever they could to not let him take over the game.
He's such a superstar, yeah.
Jordan Whittington, 7 for 89.
Yeah.
That's solid.
Yeah. They make do with the Atwells and Parkinson, and Whittington's probably the best of the group right now.
They're just not winning.
I'm not certain, but I think they're on a bye and expect either Kupp or Nakua after the bye.
I think Kupp is back. Nakua is still a couple weeks away.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew somebody was on the horizon.
Kyle Pitts had 7 for 88, but didn't score. Are you believing in that now?
Enough that he shouldn't be on the waiver wire.
He should be on the waiver wire, but I'm not throwing him right into my lineup either.
No, but I'd start him over Andrews, who's my other option. I'll probably put a claim in for him. But he's going to be hit or miss, too.
Yeah. Christian Kirk had 4 for 88. Tucker Kraft, 4 for 88, but 2 scores.
Mm-hmm.
Tolbert, who we mentioned, 7 for 87 against the Steelers. T. Higgins, 9 for 83 and 2 touchdowns.
Like, if this was the Cowboys audio network, I think we'd be excited about Tolbert.
You'd be very excited about Tolbert.
Yeah, we may have found something there,
Michael Wilson had 5 for 78.
Coach to be out a while, right?
Yeah.
He's on IR.
He's on IR, yeah so absolutely. You mentioned Jacoby Myers, who the Steelers will see this week, 6 for 72. So there's some guys there.
Chain mover, but he gets a lot of attention now.
Josh Downs did it again, 9 for
He's
69.
Good. He's good. But, boy, Richardson will kill him.
Richardson kills him.
Yeah, Flacco's
these were the 2 weeks. If you knew Flacco was going to play, go ahead and start him.
Yeah.
Josh Downs might be a better version of Wan'Dale Robinson.
I think he is. He's a precise, short route runner that can get deep more so than Robinson. He's a little more physical, a little more explosive. I wish Downs was a Steeler. I mean, but
Could use him, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's a really good player, but his numbers won't be great with Richardson.
No, it's just not as good. But those are the top performers this week. A few new names on there.
Mm-hmm. Not many tight ends in the top list.
No, not too many.
Bowers.
Yeah, Bowers.
There's some good ones on it, off.
Tucker
Kelsey
Kraft will
tonight.
be a hot pickup this week if he wasn't already.
Yeah. I'm not sure what Musgrave's story is. But
Yeah.
I went parts of that passing game.
Absolutely. But let's get to a break. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. That's going to do it for the Fantasy Football Focus. Matt and I will be back right after this to talk more Steelers Cowboys fallout. Don't you go anywhere. And we are back. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, getting back to the Steelers game against the Cowboys, are there long-term concerns? I know that when we talked about the game against the Colts, and again, I felt like they kind of got that one back under control after the first couple of drives. Are there long-term concerns that maybe something has been unearthed about the Steelers' defense by somebody? Maybe the Cowboys saw something that the Colts. I know teams are running against their nickel defense.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a trend that they're going to have to change, or throw Benton in the game, or
do something schematically to
right. So I think you could make the argument, if you want to be really, really harsh, that they played a extremely rusty Kirk Cousins, a completely overmatched Bo Nix, an injured Justin Herbert, and then the two good quarterbacks kind of ripped them up. I mean, I'm not in that camp, but if I was making the case against the defense, I would go that direction. I don't really believe it, though.
I don't either, because
a week ago I said it's the best defense in the league. I don't know if I believe that at the moment.
You still face Bijan Robinson in that game against the Falcons. You still faced their offensive line, which was one of the better ones, and they still had their center at that point. You didn't let them run all over you.
Yep.
And Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier are certainly capable of doing that.
I was talking more about pass defense, though, to be honest with
you.
But
if you're selling out to stop the run, you might give up some stuff in the passing game, and that didn't happen. They give the one touchdown.
The one thing that needs cleaned up, which I don't think is a trend that you can just attack, is there's been some communication stuff and the communication breakdowns.
Right? That's been the biggest issue to me.
Right.
That's led to some of the stuff.
Well, besides the slot corner, they're not picking on one thing.
Yeah.
The slot corner, I don't think is going to get better.
There's not a team in the league that doesn't have communication breakdowns. In fact, John Harbaugh said today at his press conference, he counted 5 or 6 breakdowns in Baltimore's secondary that led to touchdowns, and those guys have played together for longer.
Yeah. I mean, it's not uncommon. It can't happen. It needs to be cleaned up. And
right.
The Herberts and Dax are going to find it. That's the thing. Bo Nix won't.
Right.
But
he didn't even try.
Yeah.
The Knicks game is what it is. I mean, I think their defense, looking at what their defense has done the last few weeks since the Steeler game.
Oh, Denver's.
Yeah, Denver's.
Oh, yeah.
Their offense is not a good offense, and it hasn't been all year long.
But they haven't lost since. They're 3-0 in the last 3
right.
games.
But it's been largely on because of their defense.
100%, right.
The Steelers' offense went out there and did what it needed to do against that defense, which is a good one.
Yeah. I thought we were just talking Steeler defense.
I'm just talking overall here. In terms of the game against the Chargers, you could say Herbert was, but he was hurt coming into the game. They're still a team that wants to run the football 40 times a game.
I also thought he played well.
Yeah, right.
Before he got knocked out of the game, I thought he played well.
You shut down their running game.
Yeah, and he's good.
He's good.
He's good. So I guess big picture, if I want to go back to that quarterback conversation, I still think the win against Atlanta, no matter what, looks better now than then.
Yeah.
Certainly true about Denver. In their building to start the season. They haven't lost since. I'm not saying they're a powerhouse, but that's a better win than it looked at the time. Chargers, I don't know what to think. We haven't really seen much of them since.
They haven't won since.
I don't know if it's better or worse,
Yeah.
but neither one of us thought they were a Super Bowl champion coming into the Steeler game. The Colts won. The Colts. Here's what worries me a little about looking at the Colts in context: is the Colts defense was really, really bad up until it, and was really bad yesterday. I would have liked to see the Steeler offense rip that thing apart more than they did. You know what I mean? But
To a certain degree, they did.
But they did have a lot of success against.
They had a lot of success, and they had some self-inflicted wounds.
Mm-hmm. They moved the football against what I think is one of the worst defenses in the league.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this Cowboy loss. There's obviously talent there.
I think the Cowboys are a good team, and I think
they'll end up in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, they have a quarterback.
And again, in both of these losses, it came down to one play.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially. And I know it doesn't come down to one play.
Of course.
But you had opportunities.
If that one play goes different.
You had opportunities to win both of these games the last 2 weeks. You just didn't get it done.
Yep.
And that's been something that traditionally Tomlin's teams have done, is win these close games. Well, now you've lost a couple, so you now know what it feels like to be on the other end of those things.
There's a couple trends that have changed lately, that the one-score game stuff and – well, if you win the turnover battle, you win the game. Times are changing, and that makes sense. They're not going to stay the same forever. There's different quarterbacks, so the style plays is different. What worries me, from where I sit, is looking at the Colts leading into that game, looking at Dallas leading into that game. And I had a good conversation with Wolf, and Starks was with us today. I mean, you can't look too much into numbers. These are all human beings, but I said a couple times, I'm going to have a hard time believing the Steelers, unless disaster happens, loses the Colts game or loses the Cowboy game. And I'm going to say the exact same thing before we go to the Raider game, too, because they're pretty darn bad. But I'm 0 for 2 in those conversations. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
Yeah.
And
I know that you can lose to anybody in this league.
Yeah,
I get
and
that.
that's the reality of it,
yeah.
Especially in the Colts game, if you were the team that made the mistakes offensively that turned the ball over.
Yep. You're going to lose a lot of teams like that.
In this one against the Cowboys, their quarterback was able to overcome some of this stuff. Now, some of it was things that he did, but that's kind of who he has been throughout his career.
Yeah.
He's been a guy who's loose in the pocket with the football. He's been a guy who will throw some interceptions, but he's also a guy who can elevate the receivers.
Take a game over. And,
when Rob talked about him early in his career, he wasn't necessarily the elevator.
No, Zeke was as much a rookie of the year as he was that year.
They had Ezekiel Elliott. They still had
they still had Zach Martin and Tyron Smith and
a really good offensive line. They still had receivers that were guys.
Good dudes, right?
Bryant was still a guy at that point.
Yeah, and then he got replaced by Amari. They always had guys.
They had those kind of guys that could elevate the quarterback play as well. Well, now he's at the point in his career where he's the elevator, and so.
And I'm not implying that Dallas dominated the Steelers. That word's way too big. But I could explain away the Colts loss easier because from the majority of the game, I thought the Steelers were a better team than the Colts.
Yeah.
And they didn't end up winning. That happens. In this game, I thought the Cowboys were the better team a higher percentage of the time.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
The Steelers had a bad night.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I would like to see more resistance to Dallas's offense.
And the Cowboys were a wounded animal.
They were a wounded animal. Yeah.
Their injuries were every bit, maybe even more so than what the Steelers had.
Micah Parsons. I mean, that's like Watt being out.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought you had them right where you wanted them going into that game.
They played that game without Watt and Highsmith. The difference to me, however, was Prescott.
Oh, 100%.
He was the difference in that game.
I do too. He was the MVP of the game. He was the most important guy. What worries me, what if they don't have Highsmith, Leal, and Herbig this week? I have no idea the severity of all those injuries, but I'm not super excited or super, happy about the situation. Like Loudermilk was over there at the end. I mean, it was more of a 4-man front, but I mean, they changed things.
You'll have to do some of that kind of stuff because I just don't know that you can line up. And if I'm the Raiders,
I didn't think Moon looked good, but I didn't expect
his first game back.
Right, he's a practice squad guy.
There's some things that they can do that maybe you bring somebody back off the couch. I don't know. Are they at that point at this?
I don't know. I mean, we'll find that out as the week
goes on. Can you go, hey,
but
Marcus Golden, you want to come out of retirement and play one?
Yeah, how about we give you a little signing bonus or whatever? Because Watt's going to even get more attention.
Yeah,
and he's used to it, but he's going to get tripled.
Yeah. If I'm the Raiders,
you might have to blitz more.
I might want to. Well, that's the thing. So I'm sitting in the press box yesterday, and one of the other reporters goes, "They're not blitzing Prescott at all." I'm like, "Have you seen his numbers against the blitz?
Blitzes
you don't blitz him."
No.
That's silly.
We talked about that plenty going in. Like, that's a bad idea.
You can't do it because he'll find the open guy.
He's killed the blitz for years, and then you showed us, last week, his numbers versus pressure in general were off the charts.
Yeah.
This year, they also didn't blitz Fields much. I know blitz percentages today. Like, people are starting to honor Fields. He used to be like the most blitz quarterback out there, and the last 2 teams haven't.
So I mean, you were rushing your 4, you're dropping, 7, you should be able to make some plays on the football. And they did, but not enough.
So one thing about that right outside linebacker spot, if it's dire times, I have mixed feelings about it. But Collinsworth even brought it up last night. He's like, don't be surprised if this guy's rushing off the edge like Herbig at some point this year, after he gets his feet under him. He did a lot of it at NC State. He's a rookie and he's played 4 or 5 games. You know what I mean? And I don't look at him as a Herbig like pass rusher.
But they did that. They had to do that with Lawrence Timmons. You're talking about Wilson. They had to do that with Lawrence Timmons for a year at times. And again, you may not get the pass rusher, but I'm at the point now though in the nickel defense. I don't know if I don't want to Landon Roberts out there.
Yeah, especially if you're going to get run on.
Yeah, get me an extra run stopper out there because he's good.
Yeah, and you're allowing a lot in nickel versus run.
And I'm not saying it's on the linebackers, but
if he's a good run stuffer, I might concede a little bit of middle of field range and
especially if you have to hit the break if necessary. Button here and put Peyton Wilson as outside linebacker.
Well, then it's definitely like if he's coming off the edge. You can still drop him into coverage off the edge.
When I have my best 11 on the field,
there might be 3 off the ball guys.
Yeah.
I'd also see a little more from Queen. He sets up more to be his spot should be making a lot of plays.
Yeah,
not making a lot of plays.
Yeah, I mean he's making the stuff that's there for him, but you want to see splash. That's what they're paying. They're paying him for splash.
And he had a couple yesterday where he's chasing sideline to sideline. You're like, there goes a rocket ship.
Yeah.
But needs to be a difference maker.
And here, we're talking about communication issues. He's the communication hub on the defense.
Yeah, but they've been mostly secondary stuff.
Right.
Like he's not safety corner responsibilities, but he is the play caller.
Yeah. And we forget that 3 of the 5 defensive backs who are out there all the time, basically, or the majority of the time, are new guys to the team.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So...
But those excuses and offensive excuses are soon out the window. I know there's a lot of shuffling. Nobody cares anymore. It's just that nobody cares to begin with. I mean, that's just how the league is. But it doesn't mean it's not there. And like Linval Joseph, he was a rock in the middle of that lineup. And Frazier's a really good center, but that guy wasn't going anywhere.
He's 350 pounds.
Old man strong that is going to do that for 10 years if he wants.
He's been doing it for more than 10 years already.
Right. He can do as long as he wants because he came out of the womb like that,
So this one, we talked about this off the air, but we haven't talked about it on the air. There's this idea that Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's just playing awful.
I don't see it like that.
He's doing, and so I'm rewatching the game last night. As I finished up with the game, went to the locker room, talked to some players, went back up to the press box, transcribed all everything I got from the locker room, and I said, looked up and it was 2:00 in the morning. I said, you know what? I'm going to drive home to write my 10 thoughts instead of waiting until after I write my 10 thoughts and then driving home at like 5 in the morning.
Okay. Neither's an ideal answer.
Neither's ideal.
Right,
yeah. So I went home and I threw the replay of the game on while I was writing my 10 thoughts, and I'm listening to the broadcast, and Collinsworth is talking about, Minkah Fitzpatrick's got to get over and make that play, but he's shading towards CeeDee Lamb on that play. No kidding.
What
really?
more do you want him to do? Right.
Right. Yeah. So he's shading over, and the Cowboys know this because everybody shades to CeeDee Lamb.
If he's on the left hash and you expect him to make a play on the right sideline, it might be asking a bit much. Right?
So because Collinsworth said that, now that's on that's Minkah Fitzpatrick's fault for not making that play. You can't have him do both. Do you want to see CeeDee Lamb take the game over? Because he's certainly capable of doing that. The guy had 130 catches last year. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's going to get a lot of attention.
I do think we said this an hour ago, but we definitely talked about it a lot off the air. Is the clear goal was don't let Lamb kill you. And then Ferguson second. And there was a handful of snaps against Hard on TV where it was pretty clear Minkah came out of center field. KZ was playing center field, and he was playing man on Ferguson.
Yeah.
You know, like
in some
Ferguson
key
wasn't doing anything
situations.
in those situations.
Yeah.
Right. If you guys think Fitzpatrick's part of the problem, you're out of your mind.
Just because he's not getting the turnovers right now. Again, he led him with 10 tackles yesterday.
Did he? And they weren't 20 yards downfield.
No.
You know, right.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing what the defense is asking him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in that situation was don't let CeeDee Lamb have a 12 catch for 187 yards. Don't let him be Jamar Chase in this game because he's certainly
3
capable
touchdowns.
of doing that.
Oh, he's done it. He did it all last year. He does it often.
He finished that game with 5 catches for 62 yards. I guarantee you that will be one of the more quiet games CeeDee Lamb has this season.
Yeah. And he'll operate out of the slot. He'll operate outside. You know, you're going to have to
moving
help
him around,
him.
you know.
Yeah. You're going to have to help him.
And so, that was their goal, to not let CeeDee Lamb beat them. And CeeDee Lamb didn't beat them.
And I bet if they ran it back again today, they'd do the same thing.
I would.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
And maybe Tolbert still has a nice day. And I would hope if you ran it back again today, the Steelers would stop the run a little better and get off the field a little better and those type of things. But playing too many snaps and Dak being a really good player was, to me, the difference.
Absolutely. I agree. Let's get to a break.
Yeah.
He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back to finish up the show right after this. And welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, the AFC right now,
Topsy-turvy.
a little topsy-turvy.
Browns stink.
Despite the loss yesterday, the Steelers still the 5 seed right now.
Oh, are they? Okay. Kansas City doesn't matter tonight, obviously.
Yeah, Kansas City 4-0 right now, leading the AFC. You got Houston at 4-1, Baltimore now at 3-2, tied with the Steelers. They of course have the division win, so that puts them as the first place team.
They've actually played a division game.
Buffalo at 3-2 would be the 4 seed. The Steelers would be the 5 seed. Then Denver, and the Chargers.
Okay.
So
Denver's won 3 in a row. I mean,
and then after those 7, nobody else has a winning record in the conference.
I heard today something like 23 teams are 2-3 or 3-2, which is exactly what the NFL wants. And
It is.
And now we have Jacksonville won, so we don't have any winless teams anymore. If Kansas City loses, we only have 1 undefeated. So the team, I know Steelers won 3 in a row and they lost 2 in a row, and now they're terrible. And they were great 2 weeks ago.
People feel differently about it if, let's say, they lost in Atlanta where they were underdogs, and maybe lost in Denver,
and then won the last 3,
but won the last 3, or if they, however those losses come, if they had beaten the Cowboys last night to get to 3-2,
be 100 times different. Or stupidly enough, let's say the exact same game happens, the ball comes out of Dak's hands exactly, and it clanks off Tolbert's hands, and the Steelers win on 4th down.
Yeah.
Did you play any better?
No.
Not one bit. But
or if the fumble, if one of the Steelers falls on the fumble.
Right.
I
mean, like one of the last plays of the game goes slightly different, and you did nothing better. They just screwed it up just a little bit, or Dak overthrows them. Like, boy, we're so much better now. We didn't do anything different,
Yeah. So,
it's just what the league is my point.
It really
they want
is.
parity, and they're getting it.
So right now, if you look at strength of schedule, Kansas City's at 474, Houston's at 560.
This is who they've played so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh are third in the conference at 542.
Okay.
In terms of strength of, it's actually second, 542. The Steelers' strength of victory rate now is 571. That's the best in the AFC, with the exception of Indianapolis, because the Colts beat the Steelers.
Right. I will say I saw it today, which isn't real hard to figure out. Steelers' next 3 opponents all have losing records as we speak, so that's only going to go down,
right?
Assuming you win.
I bring this up because Buffalo's strength of victory right now is 333.
They're kind of in a rough spot right now.
Buffalo in the last 2 weeks has played Baltimore and Houston.
Yeah.
And they were down big against Houston yesterday.
Came back and made it.
Baltimore smoked them.
Baltimore crushed them. They baby stepped their way into it, and then they got blown out in that game. All the Devontae Adams talk to Steelers is great, but if I was Buffalo, I'd be after him hard.
Yeah.
I mean, especially you sitting there watching Stephon Diggs fill in for Nico Collins on the same field you're on. And I understand Diggs is hard to deal with or whatever, but I'm sure Josh Allen on 3rd and 6 is like, Houston's playing man coverage like every snap, and we have nobody who can get off press man coverage. Like, what am I going to do? And Diggs is over on the sidelines waving at him. But they win.
I don't know if he was waving. He might have been waving something else. So here's the other thing. You know who the last place team in the AFC is?
Browns.
16th. Number 16. Cincinnati.
Wow.
Because
like all the tiebreakers are working against
because
them,
they're 0-3 in the conference.
Wow. Okay. And a division loss, by the way, but you're right.
And 3 of their losses have come at home.
So they've played. I mean, it's an uphill climb.
It's an uphill climb. And now we said the same thing last year about Buffalo.
Right. And they climbed it.
And they climbed it, and they got back into it. I don't know if the Bengals can do that, though, based on what they currently have.
Yeah.
With that defense.
That was a crazy game. It was a really good game.
Could have won it.
Yeah, you're right. 9 touchdown passes between 2 really, really high-end quarterbacks. And are we happy the Ravens won, though? I remember I asked you that on Friday. It'd be nice if the Bengals would disappear, and they're pretty close to disappearing.
They're getting very close.
I didn't realize they were 16th.
16th, dead last.
Stuff. But the Ravens are scarier now. I mean, it'd been nice to still have a game on the Ravens. But
get to play them all twice. That's
right,
the nice thing about it. That game yesterday.
Of the 1-win teams in the AFC, though, I still give the Bengals the best chance of being relevant or getting the playoffs.
Your 1-win teams now are Tennessee, Cleveland, New England, Jacksonville, Cincinnati.
They're still the best, but I'm happy that they're the worst tiebreakers.
They're sitting there with 4 losses, and 3 of them are in conference.
And you said 3 are at home.
And 3 of them have been at home, yeah. And their 1 win came over a team that has 1 win.
Who'd they beat again?
Carolina.
Oh, right.
That's the one team that they beat. Like
when it's all said and done, that's not a good. If you just look at their record and you just look at the standings, you'd be like, "This team's terrible."
Yeah,
but they're not.
Cleveland, 1 win right now.
Cleveland can't make the playoffs.
Cleveland's done.
Cleveland's done.
You want to talk about a bad football team?
Yeah.
Offensively, they are.
They're going to be like in the 30s in the
They're
DVOA.
the worst offensive team in the league.
I think so, too. Miami and New England have some arguments, but I would take either one of them over Cleveland.
They can't run the ball. They can't throw it.
No. Quarterback's a
the
nightmare,
quarterback
and he's not going to be
can't stay upright.
And he's not going to be out of the lineup.
Yeah, and they're going to keep starting him.
Yeah.
And it's affected the defense now. Myles Garrett played the entire game yesterday.
Yeah, it blew me away.
He played, I looked it up,
Yeah.
played 58 defensive snaps. 58. He had no stats in that game.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Not a tackle.
An assist, a half a sack.
I'm sure Pro Football Focus had him for like 17 hurries.
Right.
But nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And
not one stat.
We've seen it so often where a strong unit like that was probably going to come backwards a little no matter what. I mean, they probably weren't going to be a top 2 defense, but they're probably going to be a top 8 defense. And you go in the locker room like, you guys are horrendous, and you're just going to keep trotting out the same quarterback, and you expect us to get you wins? Like,
yeah.
We can't do it.
I can remember, back in '93, Greg Lloyd blowing
happened here.
Blowing up on the offense at halftime. Like, they needed to win against Cleveland in the last game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they were losing against the Browns, who were bad that year. And he
because of the offense.
Yeah, because the offense wasn't holding up its end of the bargain.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, you guys are messing with my money here," because he wanted the playoff check to make the playoffs. And he didn't say messing.
Yeah.
But
it's okay if it's like I'm the 10th best defense and you're the 20th best offense.
Yeah.
But if it's like 1-32.
It gets
Come
old,
on, man. Right?
It gets
right.
old,
right.
And you see that we can't protect our quarterback. Even when we do protect him, he can't make any throws. All of Deshaun Watson's throws are to the running backs.
Yes,
Amari Cooper's out there running routes for no apparent reason.
Yeah, and when are they gonna move on from him? And like, are they gonna look at this thing as like, we better save some money in the future, dump some guys? And
yeah,
I'm wondering. I mean, I know the trade deadline's not for a while, but Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper. Watt Hopkins. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are on.
Are the Bengals a couple of losses from saying, you know what, let's get something for T. Higgins while we can?
Maybe one more. I think they have a pretty easy game this week, but I don't know if anything's an easy game anymore.
Yeah, they can't stop anybody.
You go 1-5 or 1-6, and you have no plans to bring them back.
I mean,
send them to the Chiefs.
They got the Giants this week in New York.
That's not as easy as it looks.
No, the Giants just went out to Seattle and beat them.
Yeah, and they'll rush the passer and
run the football and do all that stuff. There's basically what's going to be an elimination game on October 20th. Cincinnati at Cleveland.
Oh yeah. Even if they both win this week, the loser of that game's out of it.
Because then Cincinnati goes. They host the Eagles. They host the Raiders. Then they're at Baltimore, at the Chargers, Steelers at home, at the Cowboys, at the Titans, Browns at home, Broncos at home. That doesn't look as easy as it did before.
No.
And then at the Steelers again. Like, how many more losses can they afford? You're losing gimmies here. You've lost to the Patriots
already.
Yeah.
They can probably allow 2 more. Yeah.
To have a legit
to the right
shot.
teams,
yeah.
though. I mean, it can't be the AFC.
They can't lose any more to AFC teams.
AFC teams. And you don't have a lot of home games in your back pocket. That's going to be tough.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Matt, that's going to do it for the show today.
All right.
We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll see what Mike Tomlin has to say, if anything, about the quarterback situation.
I'm sure it'll come up.
We'll find out more about some of those injuries and how severe they are, what happens there. But for my partner, Matt Williamson, for Justin Miller here on site, keeping us on the air, and for Tyler Vittmeyer running our video department out of this thing here. You are the video manager. I've just promoted you. How about that, Tyler? I'm Dale Lolley. We appreciate you listening to this edition of The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.